Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suttress here. My good buddy, Eoin McCauley, our man in Dublin, has provided us with 4 really cool panels from Dublin Comic-Con. The panels were hosted by the Tala Academy of Sequential Art. I'm always grateful to Eoin because it gives us some insight into some creators that, frankly, the States don't cover. So this is a great chance to hear about some international stars that are making some incredible stuff. Voices from the Tala Academy panel room at Dublin Comic-Con on this episode of Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Alex is a good friend of the show, and I am honored that he aligns himself with Word Balloon, and good Lord, we all love his iconic art, whether it's for DC, Marvel, things like Monty Python, The Monkees, David Bowie, so many other great licensed things, the Beatles. If you go to AlexRossArt.com, you will find great value for your dollar, whether you can spring for something like original cover art or pages to lithos and posters, every price point you can imagine, you will find something and a beautiful image from AlexRossArt.com. It's the nation's second longest running comic convention. It's Ithacon, April 22nd and 23rd at the Campus Center of Ithaca College. Tickets are just $20, $5 for kids 17 and under. Order tickets now at ithacon.org. Featured guests include the legendary Walt and Louise Simonson, DC comic vets Shelley and Philip Bond, Dean Haspiel, Mike Gold, the classic Spider-Man and Superman writer Roger Stern, Megaton Man's Dom Simpson, Star Trek's DS9 J.G. Hertzler, and many more. This year we'll have amazing comic publishers like Ahoy Comics, Dynamite, A Wave Blue World, and SHP. There'll be cosplay contests, panels, kids' activities, and more. Plus, Ithacon is offering swag bags for the first 200 attendees to buy tickets. These overstuffed swag bags offer over $30 value in comics, books, and more. Join us for Ithacon, April 22nd and 23rd at the Campus Center of Ithaca College. Order tickets now at ithacon.org. Word Balloon is also presented by my listeners, the League of Word Balloon listeners. The help that I get via contributions from Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. You hear the entertainment that I provide from Word Balloon every day, that I do a new episode. I am very fortunate to have the great creators of comics and pop culture willing to come on and give you great entertainment. I hope you will consider making an actual cash contribution via Patreon, even $1 a month. But really, if Word Balloon is worth the price of a comic book a month to you, it would be greatly appreciated if you slide that extra money you would put on an issue of a comic book to Word Balloon via Patreon. Patreon.com/wordballoon. Thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners. Eoin starts things off with a conversation with Rapha Lobosco from Dynamite Comics' 007 James Bond series, written by Garth Ennis.
And we're live at Dublin Comic Con with Rapha Lobosco and his adoring public. Crowds. Now, we're recording this super early at the con, so there's still a queue of people trying to get in, and everyone's gone straight to the autograph line. So we're sneaking this in before the mania takes over. So thanks for coming along, Rapha, to DCC. Is this your first time at DCC?
No, that's my third time actually. I was here in 2016 and 17. I had chair table 2016, but I had my own table 2017.
Okay.
And it's good to be back. Yeah,
and you also did before the organizer of the show did a smaller show, KCon. Remember KCon?
Oh yeah, that was cool actually.
It was it was a lovely show, but what happened was it happened on 2 events. One was I think it was a bus strike or a train strike, one or the other.
Okay.
So transport was chaos.
Yeah.
And the second was, it was on April the 1st. So it was in Kerry. So the locals actually thought it was an April Fool's. They didn't think it was actually going to be a Comic-Con. But, the actor Casper Van Dien from Starship Troopers, he actually got engaged at that show.
Oh, wow.
He and his partner got engaged. So I was like, it's like something out of a sitcom, you know?
Yeah, no, Killarney is a good place, you know, it's a nice place to be. I think it's romantic as well.
It is.
I've been to Killarney before the call, and we had a really good time there. So I was glad to go back actually. So, but yeah, like you said, it took 5 hours by bus. It was a long trip. But
Like, we're a small island, like 5 hours. Put that in proportion to like the biggest cities.
Yeah.
It's insane.
exactly. But no, it was a good show. It was one of the most fun shows actually I've been to be honest.
Oh, that's good. Well, hopefully it comes back. I think they're going to try and satellite out to other counties across Ireland as well.
That's cool.
But we'll see what the future brings.
Yeah.
So, Rapha, at the moment, you're working on James Bond with Dynamite.
Dynamite, yes.
And before you came, we were discussing how it's all a fraud. You're not actually well versed in James Bond. How did this happen? How did you get James Bond? And you don't know the first thing about James Bond.
Oh man, you see, I don't have a good memory for those things. You know, those people that watch movies and they read things and they remember the lines, remember the names. I was just chatting with the guy now, and he would tell me the names of all the actors that did Watchmen.
Yep.
And the movie, and I said, oh, "Look, dude, like I'm so bad. I watched the movie a couple of times, but I have no idea the names of the actors, nor some characters, you know." Like, and so it's like that. I've watched the movies. Like my grandma used to have this collection in VHS, all the movies from back in 70s, 60s, and to the 90s, like Pierce Brosnan ones. So I'd watch all the time. Then I would go to her place. And so I always loved the character, you know. But yeah, if you start to asking me like what I think about the books, what I think about that specific movie, that some scene that happened, forget about it, you know.
Who knows? This could be the start of something. Maybe I've uncovered a medical condition now. You're losing your memory. I feel so bad now. Oh no! But you're working with Garth Ennis on this book. So, what's that been like? The experience back and forth. Have you guys actually physically met face to face yet? Has it been entirely remote?
No. We actually met in New York last year.
Nice.
Yeah, we were both at New York Comic Con. And we met there briefly. He was very nice, like very nice guy, and very easy to talk. You know, I thought he would be more, let's say, closed. You know, to actually, because he's this big name in comics and everything. But yeah, it's been great to work with him. He's really good, as you expect. You know, like his story is really good. Like, and one thing that's interesting, he's very certain about things that he wants me to draw. The way he wants to tell the story, you know, which can be challenging sometimes, but it's cool as well. One of the things that I enjoy, and I think that's funny, and maybe it's one of the things that make him as good as he is like he's very specific about everything. So he'll give you like the brand of the guns. They'll give you the model of the helicopter that you have to draw. It's not just like hey, draw a helicopter, you know. He'll give you the actual model of the helicopter because he knows his stuff's about military and everything. So which is cool. So it's great. Like working on James Bond has been great. I've worked on James Bond before, like 5-6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now James Bond is doing 10 years at Dynamite.
Oh wow! So it feels like it's only started like a decade. That's crazy.
It's a decade. Yeah. So it's kind of they're celebrating 10 years, and they're not doing variant covers. So it's been this kind of special event thing, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. They've been trying Garth Ennis for a few years, and he always said no. So he finally agreed to do it because he said he felt that he had a story to tell. So it's been great so far. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. And have you you've done some other books with Dynamite, have you? Or am I mistaken in that?
Yeah, no, I've done quite a few series with Dynamite. I've done Hackslash, I've done Vampirella, a few Vampirellas, like I did a special. I did a fill-in for a Vampirella series back in 2018, I think. James Bond, I did a one-shot, James Bond as well, James Bond again. Jennifer Blood. You know, Rob Carey, which is an Irish artist, he was doing Jennifer Blood. He moved to DC, and he asked me if I wanted to do Jennifer Blood, and it was cool. I've done 2 issues with it. Yeah, and other issues here and there. Dynamite always has something, which is cool, you know.
That's cool.
So it's great to work with them because they're very easy, and they have like those nice IPs, you know, like they have like James Bond, which is a kind of spy story. They have Vampirella, which goes to horror and vampires, and like Soundjack, which is more medieval superhero things, which is cool. Like they have really nice titles on their belt, so it's quite nice to work with them actually.
Great. And you've had an interesting, just not just career trajectory, but also just like life in general, because as listeners will probably detect, that's not a Dublin accent, you know? It's more of a Cork accent. But so you're living in Dublin now, but you're working for an American publisher.
Yes.
But where do you hail from originally? What was your story? How did you end up here, and what led you onto this type of a career?
Well, I'm from Brazil, so maybe that's where you're listening to the accent. But no, actually, I visited Europe. I visited a friend here in Dublin, way back, I think 2011 or something, 2010, and I fell in love with the city. You know, because we went to Temple Bar, we did all the good things you do when you're visiting the place, and it was late August, I think. So the weather was good. It was raining the week that I stayed here for a week. It was kind of rainy, but it wasn't cold. So I fell in love with the place, and I, went back to Brazil and met my wife there, and we stayed there. But I always had this plan to come live in Ireland. So I came to Ireland to live here in 2013. And I always work with design. I work with films. I work with animations. But my dream was to work with comics. And I felt here, the community, the people that I met here, that I had like a chance to actually work with comics. You know, maybe because it's smaller, so you end up meeting the right people easily. You know, so yeah, it's what we start doing like independent comics with people here and there. Did Dublin Comic Con twice, and then ended up getting the job at Dynamite. Those small comics I did, like I think 5 or 6 small comics. I did one for Lightning Strike
back in the day.
I think it was my first actually comic that I did here in Ireland.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of people have either done the first book here or the first professional paid work with Lightning Strike. They either did, like Ruth Redmond, I think, was one of the first, and now she's done a lot of coloring for the main books. Luca Bizzarri had done some stuff, but we once went to a Dublin show. It wasn't DCC, it was Dice. But at that show, he one of his other publishers let him down, didn't have a book for him, so he had our book to show to the publishers. And it's just, this is the thing, people don't realize when you do an indie press book, they think it's borderline vanity publishing. And, there is an element of you do it because you want to do it, but it does have a positive impact on one's career because it's building you a portfolio. It's showing the editor that you're able to keep to a time scale and a production schedule.
Exactly.
So people should, it is important. What I found, particularly with later stage Lightning Strike stuff, where we haven't done an anthology in a long time, we ended at 9, and I do want to get to 10, even if 10's the last one, just because I want that nice round double digit. But what was really interesting towards the end was no one made money directly off the anthology. We kind of used it as a platform. You mentioned Robert Carey's with The Outsiders, for example. It was his idea to do an anthology, and now he really used that to help elevate not just himself, but his peers. The reason I put pause to it was the idea of too many people using it as exposure and, working for free, and I didn't feel ethically, it didn't feel right to me. But you were saying there that you kind of, in your career, you always wanted to do comics. That was your main drive, your main passion. But you also mentioned, film and animation. Like you also worked for some animation studios here as well. So how did you make that transition? How did transition? How did your skill set I suppose it's all basically, we're talking from the Tala Academy of Sequential Art, which is a new academy. Sequential art obviously is a term broadly used for comics, but it also appeals to animation as well. But there is overlap within it. So as a visual storyteller, a sequential storyteller, what did you find useful? Did your career in comics benefit you as an animator, or was it vice versa? Did your animation career benefit your comics?
Well, actually, I always draw, like since a very young age. I've been drawing. I used to watch the X-Men back in '97.
Now it's coming back now, yeah.
Yeah, I'm watching again, actually, the old one.
Yeah.
So I like I said, my memory is really bad, so I don't remember a thing. So I'm watching all again, and I it's so weird because I saw some the list of episodes, and there are storylines there that I didn't know that they exist, or I didn't remember. I don't know. But so yeah, I'm watching all again. So I would draw like the Ninja Turtles. I grew up watching the movies, and the Ninja Turtles was the first movie I saw in the cinema as well. So I always drew comics based on those movies and TV shows. So it was something that I always enjoy. I had my own characters. I'm talking about like 10, 12 years old, you know. And yeah, so I ended up working with design. Started working as a designer because I used to live in a small city there in Brazil, and there wasn't any opportunities to work with illustration. It's funny because people would come to me and say, "Hey, why don't you go work at the police? You know, to do like those faces."
Character sketch. Yeah.
So I say, I don't want to work at the police station, you know. But anyway. And then
I want to draw fake criminals, not real criminals.
Exactly. I want to draw bad guys, but I want to draw the good guys as well. And I moved to São Paulo. In there, you know, I ended up working in advertisement. So what happened was people would know that I draw, and they asked me to draw stuff. And from there, I met people in games, in animation, and in movies. And I started doing character design and storyboarding.
There you go.
So the storyboarding part was very nice. I mean, because it helped me with, you know, choosing camera angles, space, and everything, which helped me to develop my career as a comic artist, you know, better, I think. So I did that for quite a few years, and the character design and the storyboarding. When I moved to Ireland, I decided, okay, I'm going to do comics. But I didn't do that at first, so I went back working design. I work here with at Baldur Media as well as a character designer. I kept doing freelancing for the studios back in Brazil at Starboarder as well. Yeah, and again I started doing those small comics, those indie comics, and it's funny because I send those pages. I did a comic to release here in the Dublin Comic Con 2016. Yeah. It was only 5-issue page that I wrote and draw. Like, it was very simple. There was no dialogue or anything. And I sent that to some publishers and asked them for feedback, you know, because that was my main goal, to get feedback, to get better, to be able to get work. And Dynamite actually, instead of sending me feedback, sending me work.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it was funny because they sent me an email asking if I was free to work. And I've done some work as an inker for Titan on Doctor Who.
Oh, very good.
You know, it was more to help a friend, so he was doing it, and I did it for as a friend to help him. So they said, okay, you have some experience, you know, you worked before.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, kind of. Yeah, so they offered me James Bond.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like kind of really weird, but at the same time I got very anxious about it because I said, okay, I never done like a series, and they're giving me James Bond, which for me like is a big character, and with Benjamin Percy writing.
Yeah,
he was doing Green Arrow at the time with Otto Smith, you know.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's a big thing, but it was cool. I enjoyed like everything. The people seems to like it as well.
Dynamite definitely seem to be one of the more accessible publishers in the US at the moment.
They definitely are.
Because I know, like DC and all, it's very much non-solicited. You know, it's like if you want to get in, you kind of will come to you. You don't come in. Marvel have a type of an accessibility, but it's usually at conventions like New York.
Yeah,
and you have to go up and do a portfolio review and get in.
Yeah, exactly.
But as someone who kind of dipped in and out of pure comics and then adjacent fields, and as you mentioned, you've been involved in the indie scene as well. Is there any standout advice or a piece you would like to share with people? Like if someone comes up to your table over the weekend saying, "Oh, this is great. How'd you do it? How can I replicate your steps?" You know, what do? Do you disappear them so they're not competition? Or do you what would you say to them? What have you learned in hindsight?
Yeah, no, actually, I guess. Well, if you draw, if you write and draw stuff that you wanted to work with, because it's funny. Because of course, every artist that draw comics wants to draw like the Batman, Superman, X-Men, which are superheroes. So if that's your thing, to go for it, create your own heroes and everything. It's funny because the comic that I did, that I sent to Dynamite, it was a guy that was basically a spy, So they look and say, okay, that works. This guy likes to do that, and so that what opened the door for James Bond to me. It was specifically that 5-page comic that I did, and so yeah, that's what I'd say. Like, keep doing it. Do your thing, do what you like, and do what you wanted to do. If you want to draw Superman and Batman, create stories. Create scripts and stories and draw superheroes. Look at what they're doing, and like how the pages are laid out, how the story is is told. So, yeah. I guess that's the only advice I really, because I could give you like, oh, you're gonna learn draw this and that, but each person is different, learn different, and has a different taste, So I guess it's just, I could say to you, go draw like Mike Mignola or go draw like Jing Lee. But both of them are really good and really different, and they do different stuff, So yeah, I guess is what you want to do it.
That's excellent advice. And what's really interesting,
stuff like that. So I think they're gonna close on 6 issues, but I'm not sure about trading. They're probably gonna do it again. It's 10 years James Bond. They're celebrating. They make a big thing about it. They're not doing variants or anything like that.
Okay.
It's selling pretty well, and I heard people saying, "Oh, I'll wait for the trade." So I do think that they're gonna do that. They're gonna have a trade, but I'm not sure when.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can pick up now, and back issues will be available
definitely,
as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks so much, Rapha. I'm going to let you get back now because I know it's the show has just begun, so I've probably taken prime real estate time from you now. But thanks again for it, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
So, welcome back, and we're here now in the Tala Academy sequential art room with Pádraig Murphy, producer at Cubicle 7 Games. So, Pádraig, a little bit about yourself then. How did you end up working in this field in particular? Was this something that was always on your career roadmap, or was it something that you arrived at after, studying elsewhere or pursuing others?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, thanks for talking to me and having me. Second of all, I don't think I ever possessed anything as serious as a career roadmap in my life. So, no, it wasn't. And it's been wild and great and really interesting to get into the industry. So I started out as a fan playing role-playing games, and they were a real sort of like break from, went to a boarding school. We didn't have I wasn't hugely into sports, but I did get into gaming and Warhammer especially. So played that for a while, went to college, played more role-playing games, sort of thought, gaming would end in college actually. And of course the exact opposite happened. And I played it and just fell in love with it as a hobby. And very quickly I was writing my own adventures and then writing my own little supplements. And eventually I got to the point where I was doing whole rule sets for myself and about 4 or 5 other people who were the only ones who ever saw them. I think I've probably written more for those role-playing games than I did at any point in college for any actual thing. But yeah, so I ended up working in print for a long time. I was manager of a small team at a company called iSupply in Galway at one point, and sort of worked in every part of the print industry I literally started photocopying things. And for there was into graphic design and then sort of like data management. And I tried my hand at a lot of things. And sort of in my off time, I was writing supplements for role-playing games, especially Dungeons and Dragons. And I popped one up online, which I won't even mention the name of it because I think I'd be ashamed now of what's in it. I haven't looked at it in a few years. But I popped that up, and that became something like the basis for a portfolio. And I was lucky enough to get an interview with Cubicle 7 and started up with them in 2019. And I've never looked back since. So it's interesting. It's been a really exciting career to get into.
It's really interesting. I've been doing this panel room and podcast recordings here for a number of years now, and a recording pattern we're seeing with various different speakers we have from film, games, animation, comics, always passion driven. It seems to be, like, as you were saying while you were in college, it seems to be like a passion that you just had. And
absolutely, yeah. No, I have to restrain myself on role playing games. I genuinely think they're on some level important. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an industry that you would struggle with if you're not passionate, and sometimes that can come out in the worst possible ways, where people like overwork and risk burnout because they just want something to be perfect, or they want to. This is their dream and their goal. But that's the bad side of it. But the good side of it is you can work hard on something, and you can make your career giving people the same experiences that you had, and that you've had around games. Or I think that really applies to any artistic endeavor. Because I know plenty of comic book folks got into it because they loved comic books and wanted people to read their stories and see their art and have the same feelings that they had. Often I say as a kid, but actually at any point in your life. Yeah,
no, it's true. It can come at any stage. Passion is passion.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
And you actually mentioned something that my ears picked up when he said, "Oh, portfolio." Like how to get into the role when you interviewed with Cubicle 7. Like, what did your portfolio kind of not specifically consist of, but what does that look like? If someone wants to present to you a portfolio, what would that look like?
So if you were, it would depend on what it was you want to do, because if you're an artist or a writer, then your portfolio should consist of your best and most, the bits you're most proud of in terms of art or writing. Specifically when it comes to writing, we like to see things that, like if you wanted to come to Cubicle 7 and write for us, say in any capacity, send me something that you're proud of but that's published somewhere out there, because I can't open, if you've written the best next supplement for Warhammer or whatever, and it's totally unpublished only in your head, I can't even look at it. Because, in the same way you couldn't look at a script for something like that. But if you've published something, and it doesn't need to be with another company, it could be on a blog, on Reddit, anywhere you like, send it, link us to that and say, hey, I did this, I think it's good. I think with the right support or with a bit of mentorship, it could be really great. Do you think I could write for you or do some art for you guys, or whatever the case may be? And honestly, that's 90% of what we look for in anybody is talent and passion, and that they're a good person to work with. So if you wanted to get into role-playing games in the way that I did, don't know if that's the best way, but it's the way I did it. Just make lots of games, accept that, you're only going to 90% of what you write, you'll probably just share with your friends at the table. And that in itself is fulfilling. But if you do that and, you repeat it and you know what makes people have a bit of joy and sparks interest, they're the things to pick up on and start putting into something that maybe you want the wider world to see. And the barrier to entry to getting it out there yourself has never been as low as it is now. You've got Drive2RPG, you've got various systems like the DM's Guild and so on. There's great ways to get your work in front of people and be seen and listen to their feedback. And, you're going to take a few knocks along the way, but don't let it get you down, If you're enjoying it, if anyone's enjoying it, it's worthy on its own right.
Oh, that's fantastic. And actually, that's great to hear about the platforms, because often when I'm talking to students in particular, we're trying to encourage them that, when no one's watching, do you still do the work? That's when I have a portfolio, new applicant applying for college. Typically, I'm like, my portfolio definition is very broad. I'm just looking for an independent body of work that you produced that no one asked you to, that you were self-motivated. You could see it through to completion.
Yeah.
These are important. So anyone listening, it's easy for us to say, but in the moment it is tough. No one's questioning that. When you go to do something, it's nice when it's a passion as well, but it is tough to see it through. But stick with it, because it does pay. People do pay attention. And it's great to hear that the platforms there as well, where industry is watching. That's great, because sometimes, people are worried, if I put that out there, if a tree falls in a forest, does anyone hear it,
Yeah, well, that's it. But, you put it out there, and even if the industry doesn't see it, if a few people pick up on it, if it gets the odd review, that's your portfolio now. You pop that in, hey, I published this, I was able to deal with, the writing, getting it put together, getting it out there. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not, and there are barriers, but it's easier than it's ever been in that respect. So get it out there and share it, and be proud of the stuff you've done.
Fantastic. And in your time at Cubicle 7, then, what type of projects have you been working on yourself? Any precious babies to you that really stood out? Like, I love this one.
Plenty of them. I've mostly worked on the Warhammer license, and I've kind of chipped in and annoyed people on other things. So I've been working on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which is a classic game. It's in its 4th edition with us, and I've worked on an awful lot of things there. Similarly with Wrath and Glory, which is our Warhammer 40,000 game. I guess the bits that stand out to me quite a lot would be Imperium Maledictum, which is our sort of like dark, investigative, almost noir Warhammer 40,000 role-playing game. It's got a nice tight little system. It's easy to play, but it's very, combat is brutal, over quickly, usually for better or worse. And it sort of draws you into the Imperium, and, it's one of my favorite science fiction universes. And a lot of people's is Warhammer 40,000, because there's so much there, and you can have this sort of bombastic game of space marines versus horrible aliens, and it's cinematic and exciting in a sort of an action movie sense. Mm-hmm. But then you can also tell these quite human stories about people struggling to get by or struggling to make an impact in a fairly uncaring universe, and what their experiences are like. And, as I'm fond of saying, terrible universe to live in, but quite an enjoyable one to pretend to live in. There's a certain catharsis to it. And Imperium Maledictum, I loved working on. And there's, so many people put a lot of themselves into that. I know I did, and I'm quite proud of that and how it came out. So a lot of people enjoy that one, and we're looking forward to adding more to it. And then, there's a point at the beginning of any project where it's full of promise, right? Yeah. And everything's easy, because you're just like, we could do this, we could do that. And we've got one project, which is the Old World role-playing game, just coming out of that section now, where it's getting into quite serious development. And, we've got something that looks really promising and exciting, and it's really enjoyable to be working on that from the very beginning and all the way through to completion, touch wood, etc. But that's sort of like the Old World is something that's just come back to Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, just come back to Games Workshop. They sort of blew it up back in 2016 as a setting, and they've gone back to it now. So there's a ton of nostalgia for it, and a ton of new people coming in, and it's just one of my favorite settings, full stop. So I'm really looking forward to a new role-playing game there that gives people a different experience than what they've had with Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, which is brilliant. But, in its 4th edition, we've got sort of a new starting point here, almost in the same world. And it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to giving people another experience there. But it's also nerve-wracking, because it is going to be pressure. It's going to be compared to Warfare, which has been around since '86, has been worked on by some of the, the greatest writers that ever wrote a role-playing game or campaign. And this is going to be compared to that, and that's obviously, killing me. But it's, you got to try.
Did they say, what is it they say, kill your darlings? Is that what they say when you're walking?
Yeah, and we have to do that sometimes, You think you have a really nice turn of phrase, and then 3 iterations in, it doesn't work anymore, and you just got to toss it.
And you were mentioning you had a background in printing. So in terms of the physical production of the media, of the books as well as they come out, would you, in your capacity as a producer, like as your role, does that feed into it as well? The physical product? Yeah,
absolutely. So, we do digital products, but we're very committed to like an ongoing physical real world thing. It's the thing we love is books and very nice collector's editions. And I think we're known for some, and I keep meeting people at conventions who are like, I'd never play one of your games, but I buy all of your collector's I don't do role-playing games, but your collector's editions I buy and keep on my shelf because they look great. And that's lovely to hear. I don't understand those people, but it's lovely to hear.
I have the Porsche. I keep it in the garage, but I don't take it out.
yeah, exactly. It's like, we'll roll some dice. Come on. But no, it's great to see that. So it is everything, and the role of producer at C7, in the sense that, you'll start from this vision for it, and then you'll be looking at like, well, what accessories do we do? What kind of bindings are we going to have? Where are we printing this? Are we doing collector's edition or no? And your concerns sort of go from like, what commercially can we do a collector's edition here? Is it going to pay for itself, which is sadly necessary of every step of the process. And then at the end, but you do get to a lovely point where you're looking at 3 different types of leather and thinking to yourself, which one of these looks the most like a Saurus skin? Can we emboss scales on this? Does this, what way is this going to work? And that's a lot of fun. And there's a great buzz when you start to get those samples, and then the first, off the top sample. Yeah. Hey, is this okay? And it's nerve wracking too, because the problem at that stage is an expensive problem.
Gotcha.
But it's lovely. You have that, and you have that first copy, and you're just like, people are going to love this.
Do you get to keep any like the early prototypes?
Yeah, I got a bunch of them. Yeah.
Nice.
My favorite one is one of our collector's editions for a book called Winds of Magic. The first prototype we got from the factory has nothing on the inside, but the outside is like a grimoire, full on gold foil, everything. Nice. So I just have like my favorite journal ever, really. So I haven't been afraid to write anything in it yet, though.
That's the fear, isn't it? As soon as you get something, you're like, oh no! As soon as I put a mark in it.
Yeah. But I some spells or something I feel for some. Warhammer spells. I could put something in there, but yeah,
that's fantastic.
So,
And,
yeah, great to have.
And you're still. It sounds like you're still a fan yourself. Then, so like, do you guys in Cubicle Sound, like, do you play the games as well as in like the R&D? Like, do you is it still recreational for you at any point, or is it purely work when it's your own?
Oh, it's both. Like, so I love role playing games. As a genuinely capital I think they're important. They're if they're the thing for you, nothing really as a hobby will move you as much as a role playing game. And you have these experiences where I genuinely think I've learned things about my friends from running and playing games with them. So it'll never not be part of my life to play those. There are times when you go into something differently. If we're play testing a game, sometimes we'll have to stop it at a certain point and be like, is this feel right? Is this good? Is this hook okay? Is that mechanic too distracting? And that can pull you out of it a little bit. But I still run games and other people's games for folks in the office. And then I still personally, given the specific thing I do, Warhammer at its heart is a miniature war game. And I think if you want to work in that area, you got to engage with the core hobby, which luckily I enjoy. And so I still collect and make a lot of models, and if I play my cards right, I can get a few miniatures for free, which anyone who collects will know that's financially fantastic. So it's great to get them in and paint them, and
that's awesome.
Just in the same way I think anyone working in comic books still reads a lot of comics.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it's true. It's like a bad habit. Like if you want to get your kids off drugs or way, never to go near drugs or drink, get them into these hobbies, because that's where all the money will go.
They'll never have any money for anything.
Have you managed to make friends where isn't Henry Cavill getting involved with the film franchise?
No, but listen, Henry, if you're listening, you can get in touch with me. Joking aside, people like Henry Cavill have done great things for the hobby, though.
Absolutely,
and I don't know what it's going to be like when we get this Amazon TV show. I think it's when that hits, I think it's going to bring a whole new crowd into the hobby. In the same way that I think the MCU movies brought a lot of people into comics.
Absolutely.
And opened it up to this huge audience. So it's not that Warhammer's niche, nor were comics before Marvel movies happened, but they do bring in new people. And, you see it at an event like today as well, Comic-Con, where you've got like such a diverse gang of families, of people of every type and stripe and everything else. And it's wonderful to see. And I think if you're a true fan of anything, you want as many people as possible to experience it. So that's how I am about role-playing games.
Absolutely. It's interesting with the Nevermore recording. We did a panel. It's a new sci-fi show that's in early development, but literally the stigma of like comics and such kind of was brought up, how the post-Marvel kind of is being such a huge changer for us. And you're right, you met Henry Cavill. I've never met him, but my friends have, from the Tudors when he was in it. That was filmed here. He's just a sound lad, they were saying.
I've heard it said.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm excited to see what he's, if he's like the Kevin Feige for this, I suppose, kind of role is he going?
I'm not sure, because I assume he'll be in it and also directing it and also bringing, this passion to it that he clearly has. I was excited. Throw money at him until we get something else.
This is it. And do you have any upcoming projects you can discuss at this stage? Or?
The old world is probably the one that, it's a role-playing game and that's my core love. And that's coming, we're this year will be heavily focused on development of that for us. And, I wouldn't like to give a date of when it'll be out, for pre-order or not, but not terribly far away. But this year will be heavily focused on that. And that's exciting. I don't have a ton nailed down for it. We're going to try and give sort of an early offering of like, hey, here's about 3-4 books from the get-go. Pick them up in whatever bundle you'd like to grab them early on. And, because we're coming in with this setting that's sort of competing alongside something that's at 4 or 5 years of development and more than, dozens of books out. So I want to try and hit the ground running with a fairly good offering for that. And it'll be interesting, I think, for people. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they engage with it. It'll be a different game. So that's exciting, and I'm putting together playtest teams at the moment and gathering up writers and sort of all that sort of good work. So that's on my mind a lot. The other thing that we've developed that is sort of exciting for us is we haven't done a ton of card games. We've done a few. One for the Doctor Who license. We did Electric Counts a couple of years ago for Warhammer Fantasy, and we're doing a card game of Dark Tide. Fat Shark's really cool co-op shooter. So we have a 1 to 4 player co-op card game where you take on the role of the rejects, like dive into the hive, and you have like sort of a card game experience that's, you know, in playtesting we found is quite similar to that sort of sessional stuff. And you string like 6 games together, and if you do well enough, you can save the hive. If you don't, this is a hive of people. I don't know, Hive City is the idea. If anyone's confused. But, that was a lot of fun to work on, and we've been able to pull together a lot of like the concept art that was made for the game.
Oh, cool.
Will appear in and on the cards.
Nice.
So I quite like that as a
like kind of cohesion.
Yeah, exactly. And you're seeing some things that have just been on people's art stations, and you know, in sort of internal documents will be in there as, you know, this is the artistic take on that model you got, and I'm looking forward to that. That'll be good fun.
Awesome. Yeah. So I know we're just getting to end game of the show, so I'll let you get back down. Just before you go, if people want to find out more, where's the best time for the latest news from Cubicle 7?
Cubicle7games.com, and sign up for a newsletter is the best one. You can also follow us on Drive2RPG if you'd like to keep up with us there. We're also on Twitter or X, as like one guy knows it.
It's like Prince, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Threads, all the socials basically, and they're all linked from the website. But yeah, go to cubicle7games.com and sign up for the newsletter and hit all our socials.
Fantastic. Pádraig Murphy, thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Tala Academy Sequential Art panel room. Task with a Q. That's what I'm trying to roll to go with the rebranding, is Ireland's latest school focused entirely on comic book production and adjacent fields, which spills into animation and game design as well. Just before this panel, we had character design with Gary Erskine as well, who's taught for a number of years in the field of sequential art and has been published as well. Joining us now is John O'Brien from Larian Studios. Thanks very much, John, for joining us today. A bit of clap, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Fair play, all right. How much do you pay these people, John, you know?
Not enough, apparently.
So, I suppose just to begin with, I heard you working this little game. So something I might have done somewhere else, something called, what was it, Baldur's Gate?
Yeah, I saw you misspelled it in your post.
Yes,
your hashtags.
Yes, of course I did. But before we get to that stage, I suppose just a little bit on yourself and your career trajectory, because you have a fascinating pathway in how you got into industry, because you've also explored the aspect of education. So you've seen it from both sides, 3 sides almost. You've been a student, you've been a teacher, and now you're working professionally in the industry as well as content creation in between. And you've also adapted between games and animation. So I suppose I'm going to anticipate one of the biggest questions we often get is, well, how can I, work for this year? How can I go in and work in this field? So what was your education? What was your pathway and breaking point?
So I had a funny kind of education route. Like a lot of people, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left school. So I first studied biotechnology, which was unrelated to anything I do now, and I hated it, so I quit. From there, I was really unsure what I wanted to do. I ended up going to study video game design because I liked video games and figured, hey, why not make them? So I did that up to a master's, and at the end, when I finished college, we were in the middle of a recession. So there wasn't many options for media jobs going at the time, especially for new graduates. So I tried to do anything I could with what I had spent the last 5-6 years studying. So I started teaching part-time, doing animation. From there, I ended up working in Pulse for a number of years, along with Owen. I taught animation for most of that time and a little bit of game design. After I'd kind of felt like I'd done all that I wanted and could do in that, and after I was sick of trying to get jobs for other people and not myself, I decided to get a job for myself. And I went over to work for Baldur Media on the My Little Pony movie that came out a couple of years ago. And that was a great, really fun experience. Did that for a couple of years, and then when the movie was coming to a close, Larian had just released Baldur's Gate 3 EA, and were ramping up the team, so I jumped across and joined Larian, and have been there for the last 3 years and very happily ticking along, and released a game last year that's done pretty okay.
What's it been like actually being part of a team like that success, that shared success? Like that must be like really such a positive feeling, just like getting a buzz out of it every time you see.
When it sinks in, I'll let you know. I do think it's a really... It's a question you got. I think there's a few of my workmates in the room here, and I think they probably have the same answer, that I don't really know how to answer that.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels amazing. Like when we were in the studio together watching the Game Awards when we won, most of us just enjoying it and having fun, and soaking up the merriment. Per KK there at the back of the room was working at like 4 a.m, 5 a.m, because he does the hard jobs.
Someone decided to sim ship Xbox on the same time.
Oh yes, we did. We shipped Xbox at the same time. Yeah. So like those moments are wonderful and they're great, but at the same time you go into work again the next day or on Monday or whatever day it is, and it's back to the grindstone, because unlike with other forms of media, like with My Little Pony, like I finished up working on it, and then it was in edit for 6 months before release. So you finish, you hand it off, and then after a while it comes back and you can watch it and it's done. But with games, you're constantly supporting them, so the work isn't over. So you don't really get that, okay, great, everything's done, we're finished, and that's it. Because we're still supporting it, and we will be supporting it for the foreseeable future, because things break. People discover problems, and we're responsible for making sure that is fixed, and the enjoyment for our fans is there. So it's a weird. It is a weird one where you don't kind of get that immediate closure of, great, game's finished, it's been released, we're done, hands off. It's a different experience altogether.
What's very interesting for me in this room, not just even this Comic-Con, we've been doing a room like this for a couple of years now, post-COVID. When I'm speaking with creators, one of the things that stands out is kind of what you were saying when you began your career in education, was to do something that you were interested in. That was a driving. So, and then you mentioned to take care of the fans, to have the fans' interest. I'm working on the assumption, but I'm guessing everyone is a fan now who's walking in the field almost. Like they themselves, like you are the fans, so you kind of have that comparison, that understanding of expectation of what's out there. Has that ever been intimidating, I suppose? Because I know, fair enough, the success hasn't sunk in for you just yet, but as you were saying, but in terms of the when you're walking on it and then you realise, oh, it's a hit, is it intimidating then going into the next step? Definitely. I mean, there's an intimidation all the time. I mean, I think most people who work in a creative field, even if it's not explicitly in a creative capacity, like there's always imposter syndrome. There's always things like we're working on Baldur's Gate 3. We're working on an IP that other people have developed and is beloved by a number of people, and definitely people my age grew up playing these games, and they're very meaningful to a lot of people. So you've got that intimidation of, okay, there's heavy expectations on this, and also because it's games that were released back 20 odd years ago. You're also dealing with nostalgia and rose-tinted glasses and everything, and people think that these games are immaculate, almost religious experiences, and we're coming in and working on the next one. So you have that fear. But I think back to your point that, most people in it have the passion for it. Like that comes down from the very top in Larian. I think Sven's biggest mantra is always that we make games that we want to play. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to hit a certain metric that's popular. We're not trying to capture a certain zeitgeist or anything. It's all about making the type of games that we want to play and that will make us happy. There's not many people still making turn-based games out there. A lot of people were of the opinion that a turn-based game in the current generation of video games isn't a viable thing. The way we make games is not the most financially
intelligent way of making game, but that's not what we're thinking about when we're doing it. We're thinking about making the most fun that we can. We make a very expensive type of game.
There's an authenticity that's coming through into it between both the players and those making the game as well. You also mentioned, just to go back to your time with Baldur as well, you worked on Ireland's, that was My Little Pony was Ireland's first CG feature-length film as well, wasn't it, to be produced here as well. So that was a significant milestone to have also produced. What was that like, working on it, like between feature animation to now working in games? Like, was the shift in pipeline a big leap, or was it something that, okay, you kind of were able to carry some of the framework of what you were used to while working on feature film?
I mean, for producing, there's an awful lot of overlap. For the pipelines are very different, but I mean, no two companies have the same pipeline anyway. You could work in feature animation in Baldur, you could work in feature animation in Pixar, and the pipelines are going to be totally different because it's based on the composition of your team, the budget that you have, what's available to you in hardware and software and things like that, and the type of film that you're making. Like, even from film to film in the same company, the pipelines will change. From game to game, the pipelines will change. The thing that is like a big leap and difference between working in animation and working in games is that it's much more of like a linear waterfall style workflow in animation, where it starts in concept art and then you have your story doc, and then it moves through each department until it's ready to render, and then that scene is done. With games, there's still a certain element of linearity to it, but there's so much revision and iteration and tweaking and going back to things that it's a slightly more chaotic pipeline, but it's chaotic by necessity, not by flaw, I guess.
That kind of string of pearls kind of approach to it all, isn't it? Exactly. It's not as linear. And in terms of then, so your current role then, you mentioned about being producer, but it's specifically 3D environments. Is that correct?
Not exactly.
Go.
So my role is what we kind of class as a horizontal producer. So I work with a number of different departments. So my role is kind of to oversee something going from our narrative design into the game through a number of different departments, like writing and scripting and cinematics and VO and combat and level design and a couple of others that are adjacent. But it's basically you're supposed to be like owning that chunk of the game. That's what your allocation is, and just make sure it works.
I suppose that brings up an issue, because you know this term from your time teaching, which is the transferable skills. Yeah. So obviously when a student goes in to, like, okay, I want to study animation, I want to study game design, they're then furious when they're asked, why am I doing this essay? Why am I learning about research? But we have to put the emphasis on transferable skills, because as you were saying there, John, you are communicating with different departments. Well, it's horizontal, so it's interlocking, and you have to have that capacity to interact and discuss and to keep clarity along the pipeline. What would you say, being from both your experience, both teacher and in industry, what is some of the most valued skills you would say in terms of those looking to break in? You think they should be put on top of the CV, or maybe dropping in an interview? What would you? Are you involved in any recruitment process yourself? Do you have insight into that?
I do some interviews. I'm not. We have a dedicated recruitment team, and they do all the hard work.
Yeah,
but I think the best advice you can give somebody is, I mean, like, everyone knows you need to have a good portfolio. Everyone knows that your work has to be, has to speak for itself to a certain degree when someone's looking at it. But the thing that's going to help you stand out is the soft skills that you can show when you're in an interview. Like, when you are asked questions, are you actually listening to the specific question? Are you giving a coherent answer that you're condensing the information that you need to into something that's easily digestible to pass on to the person? Because that's that's a real requirement working in industry, to be able to distill down what you're trying to say into a concise answer and give that to the next person, especially for a company like us where we work across 6 different countries with multiple first languages. We've even within the individual studios, we've people from all over the world, and English may not be their first language. So being able to express yourself in a coherent way to everyone that everyone can understand and won't be misinterpreted is a really important skill to have. Also, just being really passionate and wanting, like, passion comes across, and we're always looking for people with passion and interest, and who are going to want to make the type of games that we want to play, that they want to play, what our fans want to play. And it's very hard to do that when you're not really passionate about it.
It's very vocational, isn't it? It's not like the type of job where you're looking at the clock, ready to clock out. It's kind of like the job where it's like you wake up and you're thinking about it because you love it, you know. It's not like an on-off switch. You know, there's something you mentioned, portfolio, and there's actually a line that I think I stole from you from the time we were in Pulse together that I use when it comes towards portfolio preparation, which is there's no single portfolio. You know, when you're in college and you have different modules, all those modules are designed to privilege your development in the single field you kind of want to go into upon graduation, but you don't cram it all into like one behemoth of a piece. You kind of break it out a little bit more, space it. So like if you're doing something that's more character design focused, your portfolio would lean more into that than, you know, your coding ability or something else that you might have studied. You don't force it all in. So in terms of portfolio prep, then you say have a good portfolio. That line always stayed with me. It's not just one portfolio, it's kind of for a different role. Yeah. But is there anything you would say in terms of like make it more specific, or to especially, you can even specify here for clarity's sake about animation, like what would you say to look for, like your portfolio tips, or have you ever received a portfolio tip that stayed with you?
I think the real thing is a problem that some people have, and it's not something that everyone has by any stretch, but I think it goes to that point of you don't have a portfolio, you have a portfolio for the job you're applying to. In the same way, you don't have a CV, you have a CV for the job you're applying to. It should always be tailored to what it is that they're looking for. Don't put a lot of redundant information in, don't put any redundant work into your portfolio. If your portfolio is going to be for character design, don't go, well, here's all the environments I've made, or here's an animation that I've done. Mm-hmm. Put in, like, show the person who's looking at your CV, show the person who's looking at your portfolio that you understand what the job entails. Don't put in redundant information. It's I think it's one of those things that when I was recruiting people, or part of the recruitment team back in Baldur, it was one of the things that frustrated me, seeing that people would put these huge portfolios or showreels together, and maybe 20 to 50% was actually for the job they were applying for. And you're going, well, where is your focus? I would rather have, you know, instead of 20 pieces where 4 of them are relevant, I would rather have 5 or 6 relevant pieces that are really good, that you've put all of your effort into. But yeah, I think that's a major point. And I know it sounds kind of cruel or something like that, but when I'm hiring somebody and they're applying for a specific job, I don't really care if they can do a different job, because that's not what they've applied for. So, you know, make sure that you're being, again, clear and concise with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for the KISS rule of like keep it simple as well. Like it's always quality over the quantity when putting the material out there. So over the years that you've been involved in industry, what would you say has been like the biggest change that you've seen that like and I suppose maybe from like a technology or maybe software point of view, what's been the biggest, well, you know, that would have been handy when you were starting out? Is there anything like a new latest tool that you would advise anyone considering breaking in or currently studying that they should probably familiarize themselves with this type of tool?
Not really. I don't think the tools evolve. They don't change massively drastically, I don't think. None in my experience, at least. I think processes evolve more. So, and, you know, the processes get more efficient. So keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening on that side of things. Because again, it's that whole thing of don't be doing something that's redundant. Know what the modern most efficient way to do it is. But also, I think with design and things, I don't think it's a case of there's a specific type of tool, there's a specific type of process that you have to adhere to. Show your own personality. I know with like a lot of our cine team, they all have had in like very unique and different applications when they came in and portfolios and things, and it showed their personality, and that was the most important thing. And some of them are crazy, and some of them are fun, and some of them are really dramatic and stuff. But they're all showing that they understand like everyone who's successful. They're all showing the same skills and understanding, but they're doing it in a way that's incredibly representative of their personalities, and that's a really important thing to get across as well. If you can see somebody in their work, if you can understand somebody in their work, it's a much more engaging and endearing application than somebody who's they can recreate a lot of other people's work.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. It was at the first workshop we did here today, we had Rapha Lobosco, who's currently working on James Bond with Dynamite Comics. So a lot of similar questions were asked, like interest breaking in, tips. Rapha was pointing out how he broke into industry by working with a lot of indie creators on indie books, and sometimes that's a lot of advice we give to people breaking in, students, is just collaborate, put content out there. Is there any particular platform that you yourself, or you may be aware of within industry, or just yourself individually, that you kind of would turn to or be aware of, where up and coming talent might be best to showcase? It could be something as broad as YouTube, or maybe there's a different platform out there.
Honestly, that's not something I have my finger on the pulse of too much, and probably because the last few years have been very busy.
I can imagine.
And I've kind of been singularly focused on my own work. I'm not involved really with recruitment for Larian, so it's not something I'm engaging with a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think anything like that gets eyes on your work is worthwhile. It doesn't really, like you said, it doesn't really matter what it is. Just getting your work out there is going to be beneficial in some way. Even like indie publishing stuff helps you show you can keep to a time scale, keep to actually see something through as well. There's a lot to be said for that, as opposed to individual portfolio pieces as well. Absolutely. No, that's super. Okay, so what I'm going to do now at this juncture is throw out any questions on the floor. If anyone has any specific questions that they want to ask at any point into this one here. Yep, go ahead.
How did you decide to settle on animation specifically instead of like another creative avenue?
When I moved into industry, I think because I joined because of the projects, more so than anything. If a project is really interesting to me, then or I think might be exciting to work on, then I'd go. The reason I went to work in Baldur was because I have lots of little nieces, and I knew that it'd be really fun to watch My Little Pony with them. And also it was the first feature-length CG film to be produced in Ireland. So it was, again, like something that I was very proud to be part of. But yeah, I think, and then moving into Larian, like Baldur's Gate 3 was a passion project for me. Like I was a huge fan of the series and a big fan of Larian's work. I think you move around, you find projects that you really want to do until you find somewhere that you want to stay, which is Larian for me. I'm very happy there. I don't feel the need to start looking for other exciting projects because I feel like Larian's just going to keep doing really exciting stuff. So
the company man message right there. It's like the snipe outside the window. We got him right there. No, that's super. Thanks so much for the question. Any other questions? Yep.
You said about like obviously having a portfolio specific to the job you're applying for. What would be your advice for, you look on websites like Larian and they have positions for an open application rather than just a specific job. What would your advice be for that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. The thing is, with an open application, you're going to you would generally be showing a variety of skills, but the thing is, there's always obviously going to be something that is your real major strength, the thing that you're best at, and that would be the thing I would put the most onus on when you're going for open applications. Obviously, you can show that you're able to do other things, but the risk that you're running then is that, you know, just because you can do something, and even just because you can do it well, doesn't mean that you want to do it as a career. So don't pigeonhole yourself into that if that's not something that you're sure you want to do.
How many do we have here currently studying in the field of animation or games? Cool. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah.
How different is it animating for, say, a movie in Maya or whatever you use to animating for games?
I don't animate anymore. Haven't for a good while now. But I think the thing is like in the modern day, it depends. There's not a huge difference between them. I mean, you're going to be using a lot more animation cycles in games, but even at that, there's a lot of animation cycles that are used for feature animation because you don't want to be creating a new walk cycle or a new walk animation every single time a character has to walk. It also depends on what you're doing. I mean, a lot of films and games nowadays are motion capture, which really helps. But like for My Little Pony, we can't suit up a lot of small horses and put them into a booth. So that was all like keyframe animation. There was no motion capture done at all for it. So that was laborious and torturous for the animation team. But they were amazing and did incredible work. But again, yeah, it depends on what you're doing. But I mean, again, like I said, every project, every company is going to have their own unique pipeline, their own unique way of doing things. There's principles that are kind of true throughout most of the industry, but again, it's going to depend on the type of project more so than games versus animation.
We actually have a demo tomorrow with Joseph Leroy, who's a 3D animator. He animated for the Marvels with Marvel Studios, and he teaches about the BA in animation and BA in creative tech with Pulse College. But he covers animation both in feature and in games as well. So if you're around on the Sunday as well, that demo would be great. But check out pulsecollege.com for some of that. There's like usually like demos on open days as well. But with software as well, it's I suppose there's another question as well. But do you ever use Blender much yourself? Back in the day. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah,
I used to teach on Blender. That was the first thing I was teaching on. Yeah, and it's fine.
Yeah. It's great to have because it's free. You see, Maya is uber expensive. Like, if you can get a student license, fantastic. But beyond that, you want to be really, your employer want to be picking up the tab for it. But industry standard software standard is always a good step to take when you're using it. Because I know you probably get away with Blender for a lot more, film shorts, but you really need Maya if it's going to go into the game engine.
Also, just to give a quick shout out that if you are here tomorrow and you are interested in the cinematic pipeline and all that type of work, my colleague Ellen is giving a talk and she's incredible, so it would be well worth checking out if you are here tomorrow.
Fantastic. Awesome. Any other questions on the floor? Oh, we have to. We go here and then we go here, okay?
Yeah, I'm currently going into college, looking to do things in the game side. Is there any sort of courses or just tips that you would give for like learning how to get into the game?
You're probably at the point now where you don't know exactly what role you're going for, because I think the tips change slightly depending on what role specifically it is that you're looking for. But I think it sounds like simple and redundant, but just make games and finish them. I think the biggest problem that people have when they're studying is that they start on projects or they make these small things that they're learning, but they don't have something to show at the end. like bring it through to like show, like Owen mentioned earlier, show that you have the follow through to finish a product, no matter how small it is. If it's a bit buggy, if you don't think it's amazing or whatever, just finish them. Finishing a project is the best learning process that you can have. Don't leave something to the side and go, well, it's enough. I've learned what I wanted to out of that. Finish a product. It's a big thing. And the other best piece of advice I think I can give for games is it fun? Is the first question you should always ask yourself. I think, is it fun? Is the question you should ask yourself before, does it work? Because the most beautifully made, polished, bug-free game in the world doesn't matter if it's not fun at its heart. And I know it sounds like the most basic advice ever, and you probably go, well, of course you're going to think that. You'd be surprised the amount of people who put that low on the list of priorities. It's really important. It's to me, it's number one. If it's not enjoyable, it doesn't matter. It's not going to have staying power for people. Even as a student game, it should catch people's attention. It should be fun, and that should be the number one thing. And to the point where, like, how many games have you played that have been incredibly buggy and the bugs are actually charm? You know, it happens because it's fun. It has that staying power because of that.
Yes. And so you had a question?
What was that transition like from doing film with My Little Pony to doing now with video games in Baldur's Gate 3? Like, was there any like similarities and differences with the film industry and the video game industry?
There is quite a few. I mean, with CG animation, there's a lot of overlap with, like I was saying, transferable skills, and you'll get a lot of people who have worked in both over the years. I think the main difference, like I said, is that you've a more of a linear workflow for how things work in animation, and generally your main points of communication are going to be the department who come before you and the department who come after you, and that becomes your little blocks of people who are talking to each other. In games, it's much more of a collaborative, especially the way we make games. It's much more of a collaborative process. Everyone needs to be talking to everyone. And that goes top to bottom. You know, we have like all of our creatives. We have our teams who work with our fans in the community, who are bringing back a huge amount of information to us about what people are enjoying, what people aren't, what are the main things people are talking about at that time, and that gives us a lot of information on what we should be focusing on. So it's everyone has to talk to everyone. It's much more of a collaborative process. Rather than a linear process, and it means that there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of iteration, a lot of change, a lot of going back and checking something, and so it's I think that was the major difference for me. It's a nightmare for a producer not having a linear process, but I think it also keeps it really interesting and fun and different all the time. Every day is different. Whereas you got into a much more of a flow in animation.
Just thanks so much. Any other question? We'll go this way now.
You mentioned transferable skills are very important. So if you're applying for a game company and it's your first gig that you're looking for straight out of college, is it better to show that you've tried a load of different game making programs, or is it better to show that you've really focused in on one or two programs to learn in depth?
Programs, I don't think, are the most important thing, because you depending on where you go, you might be working in Unreal, you might be working in Unity, you might be working in a company's own engine. So what's most important is less about the software and the tools that you're using and more about the principles of game design. If you can show that you understand the principles of game design, and like I said, is it fun? If you're coding, that's where, being bug free and clean and functioning properly is a good thing. That's not where you should leave in charming bugs. But once you can show that you understand the principles, the tools that you've used to build the game are less important.
Okay, so if a company used mainly Unreal and say you did most of your projects in Unity, it wouldn't be like, oh, if they use their own program, you can't look at their CV.
No, I mean, again, if they specifically state that we want you to have experience in Unreal, you should definitely show that you have experience in Unreal. But what I'm saying is, with your portfolio projects, it's less important to show that you understand the principles and that you can make games, especially the type of games or something that is reminiscent or shows some principles of design of the games that they make. That's the most important thing.
Thanks much. And over this way, yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to portfolio, like a producer's portfolio is a lot different than a designer's or an artist. Like, as a producer, what they should include in their portfolio?
I don't have a portfolio. For producers, it's more about talking about the work that you've done. It's generally, it's going to be more focused, in my experience at least, around how do you deal with your team, how do you deal with change, how do you deal with a process being in flux, how do you how do you deal with certain problems that are inevitable in a production cycle? How do you manage those problems? I think one thing that's important for producers is also being able to speak truth to power. It is your job. If something is too expensive, if something is going to negatively affect something in some way, shape or form, it's your job to identify that and to let people know. It doesn't matter who asked for it. You have to be able to go back and tell them, hey, this may not be the best idea, but here's all the evidence as to why, or this isn't going to work. But you should never come back with just this isn't going to work. It's this isn't going to work, but I can give you that. That's like it. So you don't have a portfolio, but you will be asked a lot about how you deal with people, how you deal with projects, what problems have you encountered, and that type of thing. That's kind of the main thing for producers. It's about how you deal with people. It's a people job. It's a people industry, really. So
yeah.
How does your day as a producer looks like?
Spreadsheets is that's the it's not all I do. It's a lot of what we do. But my job is, like I said, that there isn't now in games. I don't have a standard day. I have lots of meetings. I talk with lots of people. Like I said, we're spread out over 6 studios in 6 countries, so you can't just go and chat to everyone at their desk. So it involves setting up calls and chatting to people in different countries, sometimes in just drastically different time zones. So in the morning, I talk to Kuala Lumpur if I need to. In the afternoon, I talk to Quebec. And whenever throughout the day, I talk to our European studios. So it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of trying to keep track of any changes that are coming in for the work that we're doing, making sure that they're communicated to everybody, checking in with the teams that I'm working with and making sure that there isn't something blocking their progress. And lots and lots of spreadsheets.
Awesome. And then just in the back there.
Yeah, just going back to you talking about like speaking truth to power, but also keeping things collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
As a producer, how would you help facilitate that communication? Like, do you have any like tips or tricks or
between departments?
Yeah.
It kind of depends on what you're doing. And it depends on it really depends on the teams that you're working with, because there's different ways you can approach it. But the main thing is, it's your job is to ensure that the lines of communication are kept open. And one of the biggest risks that I've experienced in development of projects is as a project gets closer to finishing and the time pressures start pushing down heavier on teams. And I noticed this on My Little Pony, and less so in Larian, because it is, as I said, a much more collaborative process. But as you're getting closer and the crunch is starting to hit and people feel really pressured, you'll sometimes notice that departments start to shrink back into themselves and become islands, because they're focused on, we have to finish by this date. That is an immovable thing. So we have to make all of our work fit within that box. And what happens is people get really, really focused on that, and they start to look more inwardly when really the best approach is to do the complete opposite. Like I said, we're much better in Larian at this because it is a process that requires everyone to be talking all the time, and people, like, everyone is subscribed to that. But the closer you're getting to those points where the pressure is in and time is running out, the more you need to be leaning on the departments around you, because just because something might be assigned currently on the writing department or the cine department or the scripting department, it doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity for another department to do it in a way that might be more efficient, that might be, or who might just have more bandwidth to do it at that time. So if people start looking inwardly, it becomes a case of, you know, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, you know. So writing have a tool that they specifically use. They write lines of dialogue. Scripting will use our systemics and mechanics. Cinematics will use a cinematic scene. Everyone has a specific way that they can solve that problem. It doesn't mean that it's the right way or the best way in that moment. So as we get closer to the end, that's when you need to be communicating a lot more to ensure that you're being the most efficient with everybody. So that's I think it's not really a tip to your question on how to keep those lines open, but it's just a point of how you do it is going to vary depending on it. Like it varies right down to the specific people that you're working with, because some people, like different people, will react differently to different methods and approaches. So the main thing is, I think, just to avoid that pitfall of everybody just going into themselves and headphones on and head down, working towards the end, because they're missing out on a really good opportunity to work collaboratively with somebody to reduce the amount of stress and pressure on them.
So
Awareness is a big thing. Yeah. Awesome. Also, just keep checking in with people. So, like, I think the biggest thing is treat people like humans. That's the thing. Don't treat them like resources. Don't treat them like another piece of software. And for producers, that's particularly pertinent. Talk to your team, have fun with your team, have jokes with your team, grab coffee with your team, whatever the case may be. Just do those type of things. It's really important.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. That's kind of bringing us up to time now. The next panel after this will be Women in Animation panel, followed by Outsider Games. So thank you very much, and thanks very much, John, for answering everyone's questions. Thank you. Awesome. So welcome back. We're at day 2 now at Dublin Comic Con. We're being joined by Jay. How's it going?
Not too bad. How you getting on?
So you're here to talk about your upcoming project, Nevermore. But before we even get into that, then, do you just want to introduce a little bit about yourself in terms of your... Well, with this room, with the Academy room, what we tend to look at primarily with the individual speakers are the pathways, so the individual experiences. How did they break into industry, advice learnt along the way, driving passions?
Sure.
So just a little bit about yourself as far as your background.
Yeah. Oh, well, go back to the very start, I suppose.
Here you go, all the way back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning. So what we're talking about here, like 2002 maybe, is I started drama school just because, you know, it was something I've always been interested in, and I figured, you know, for years I'd been kind of humming around, going, how will I do it, will I not do it? And there's one time I said, yeah, okay, fine, go do it. So started that, and I just loved it, do you know what I mean? So I just kept on at it, and I'd take on I go to different courses and all this kind of stuff, and one of them I did was a stage combat course.
Oh, cool.
And that kind of led to me, years of doing that kind of led into getting working stunts and all that kind of stuff. So for like the last 15 odd years I've been doing stunts for, you know, TV shows, films, all that kind of jazz, and bits of acting in between as well, but mostly the acting is where the passion was, you know. Yeah. So that was that, and as far as the project goes, did you ever? That's a silly question. You're familiar with Firefly? Yeah. So I was a big fan of that show. You're familiar with what happened to it, all the cancelling, all this kind of crap. And I was like, well, that's not right. That's not fair. Yeah. So I decided to try and make my own kind of thing in the same vein, not the same like universe or anything, obviously, you know. But so yeah, I wrote the the script for Nevermore, and that was back in 2016 or whatever.
Okay.
So it was a long time coming. And
did that COVID break give you more time to go back to the script? Because I was like that myself. You know, you have the time now to go back to scripts and write more.
Constantly going backwards and tidying little bits and pieces up on it. And we actually shot a proof of concept during COVID, which was difficult with everything all the restrictions that were in place and all that kind of stuff. But we got it shot. So this is proof of concept, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was what it is the time restraints and all that kind of stuff. So it turned out pretty well. But now, trying to get it in there, try to get the actual pilot made so we can.
Yeah, and it's science fiction as well.
Science fiction, yeah.
So what we're looking at with science fiction, you're trying to get an Irish science fiction production off the ground. That's because that must be challenging, because when you think about it, Ireland is known for film, theatre, literature, but even now comics is coming quite more known, because even on the floor here we have Declan Shalvey, Stephen Mooney in the show, Chris O'Howland, so they're big names working on big projects. Moon Knight with Marvel. Declan did the redesign for Mr. Knight and the Marvel book. But you think in film and television we would have more. Even next door, Doctor Who is right next door, we never got anything like that here. So how are you finding and navigating that terrain?
So because it is for me anyway, it's new ground. I've never, most other projects are based in, crime or drama and all that kind of stuff.
Big crime genre kicking off at the moment. Like Kin's doing fantastic abroad at the moment.
Got my head shot off in that as well. Whenever I showed up in something, I usually die. It is a challenge trying to get it off the ground, because like I said, even the BBC has Doctor Who, and that's that's been running for 50, 60 years.
It's going on 60 years. Past 60 now.
So there's literally nothing ever came out of Ireland, at least not that I'm aware of. I know sci-fi has been shot here. You had some parts of Star Wars were shot here. Parts of I think that was shot down in Troy Studios. I can't remember what it was called. But you do have sci-fi shot here. But then those companies, they go away and do something else. But there's nothing homegrown. Nothing ever came out of Ireland, at least not that I'm aware of. Now, that's not to say there isn't, but not that I'm aware of. And I think it's something that we should do.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Especially when you consider the amount of talented people that there are in just the industry alone, like effects guys, camera guys, makeup guys, all that stuff. Like they're all like world class. Do you know what I mean? So the means to make it is there. So
it is.
Yeah.
What's the conversations been like? Speaking with people, when you mentioned like Irish Sci-Fi Project, are you finding people are open to it now? Because particularly we're living in a post-Marvel society, is that what it is? Since Iron Man, people there's no more stigma. It used to be, people wouldn't like going out to see a superhero film. Like, oh no, it's more like children's fare, family fare. But now Robert Downey Jr. and co, they kind of transformed the perception. So have people been more receptive then to these conversations? Are you finding, because it's trying to wrap it around in the film scene, because like, was it the Banshees of Inissh Free? Was it? When that came out, like that's the type of mindset people have. Yeah, and now you find the dialogue.
So it is like, okay. So the difference between now and say 5 years ago is chalk and cheese. Like back then, it was like if you mentioned sci-fi, I was like, no, not interested. Kind of. But now with a fantastic producer sitting right there, Kira, she's. She basically took the project on board, and she's like, right, we're doing this. So it's like, so you wouldn't have gotten that like most. So again, not trying to cast shade here on that, but a lot of the time the people you would approach about it, they'd be like, why don't you just have two people sitting in a room talking about it? Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And it's just like, no, you really need to see it.
And it's great because obviously I've spent past decade with Pulse College starting the new project with the Tala Academy, but with Pulse we've been teaching for years animation and VFX, and that's been really kicking off here. A lot of studios, animation studios, VFX, a lot of the big production you're seeing, the Irish Harp now at the end of it, even TV show Rick and Morty. There's an Irish shop because it's being animated here. So we have the capacity to produce this. It's crazy. But it's nothing new. It's kind of like the typical Irish way, isn't it? We build it and we send it away. We don't grow it at home. You know. So what can you talk about at this stage about the project then for folks if they want to, when they're listening to this and okay, Nevermore, where can they turn to? Is there anything available at this stage? Are you still very much at R&D before you can release to the general public?
Oh yeah, we're still there. We're still working on that kind of stuff. But we're very close to making it public.
Excellent.
Is that the right way of putting it? Making it public? Yeah, making it go public. But yeah, it's basically I didn't want to make a sci-fi thing for the sake of making sci-fi. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's set in the future and there is sci-fi elements in it, but it's not, it's not like, it's basically just normal people. Well, I say normal people, they're criminals, but just trying to survive in the world that they're in. And it just happens to be a sci-fi setting. Like, it's not, nothing against Star Trek and all that kind of stuff, but there's no, fire the photon, all that kind of stuff, all that science babble is just none of that. So that was where I was drawn to comparisons between that and Firefly. Do you know?
Have you seen The Expanse by any chance?
No, actually, I must get around to watching it.
I haven't actually seen it myself either, but it's something that as well. It's taking that approach to sci-fi where it's a grounded sense. Like it's the science fiction aspect isn't what sells it, it's the story. And that's always important, is a story first. So you would just happen, this is your story, but is this the platform of science fiction? Exactly. That's fantastic. Do you have plans for beyond also just like on the screen as well? How would you consider then? Is this something that could have franchise potential?
I hope so, yeah. I mean, that's the plan. I mean, if we can get a comic, that kind of thing, that'd be amazing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that'll only be amazing, but it's just to get it out, just to get the story out there, because it's the story I really want to tell. I really want people to know it. And,
absolutely. Because we even have a Brian Pressey who do Irish graphic novels as well. Obviously, my own favourite, Light and Strike and stuff. So there is the platform for that. Again, it's just peculiar how we have homegrown comics then it's still, but in terms of film and TV, it still hasn't arrived yet. But and how about the casting? So is that before you have to go to launch before, or is already preliminary steps towards that as well?
So no, we'd probably be doing trying to get casting, like I'm a huge believer that it's the best person for the part.
Absolutely,
the best person for the role. So I mean, I'm going to try to put myself forward for a role in it. But like, if there's someone better, But the cast again, diverse cast. It's not just all Irish people with Irish accents kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? That's the other thing as well. Sorry, not to jump back to it there, but I don't want it to be like, I want people to look and go, it's definitely Irish. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it has that kind of sense of humour and all that kind of stuff about it, but it could be made anywhere. Do you know what I mean? That's
not Paddy's in space.
There you go. That's exactly it is. Yeah, could you imagine Paddy's in space? So just stuff like that, because it's always well, maybe I'm the only person that notices it, but like, I mean, you're watching these sci-fi shows and everybody has the same accent and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's a generic. I love it though. It depends if it's in a US or UK show, but they always define it as they have some kind of universal translator.
Yes,
I get the approach to it, but do you know, it's funny. We mentioned Doctor Who earlier on, but Paul McGann did a series of Fox years ago, and what they tried to do in it was to reveal the Doctor's half human, but the reason they were doing that is because he'd be half American,
right?
And that's how they were going to. And because it was a Fox, it'd be like, that's how to get the American audience in, So it's funny. We always, Hollywood always has that way, to rope it in.
I mean, they have to do what sells, you know what I mean? But just with the whole Doctor Who thing, that doesn't, like, it has been running for years, you know what I mean? So there's no reason why.
And this is something. Then there's no, like, this is no limit to the end, or do you see something as this going to be self-contained? Like, is this going to be a contained story where you might spin off, or is this something where you see this could be going on for years and years and years and years?
I mean, everything that's written, there's 2 10 episode seasons written, but it can branch off into anything. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Like I'm a big fan of cliffhangers and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't want to end it somewhere where there wasn't the chance for it to take off again somewhere else. You know what I mean? So
that's fantastic. Because there's a lot of talk around like Hollywood fatigue, even with the superhero genre primarily. More so than sci-fi, it's superhero, but I don't think it's fatigue with the content. It seems to be more just fatigue with the quality and the content. You know, that's what it is. It's like too much. It becomes formulaic, so there's no real cap for these. If it's a good story, people throwing out. You know?
This is it. And with the superhero thing, I mean, there's only so many times you can watch the same origin story over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
I already know this. Going to move on, tell other parts of the story. I would definitely want it to branch off into other things. Do you know what I mean? Like different. The spin-offs would be great.
Yeah. Even what about? See, it's different. I don't know. You do play video games yourself?
I do. Huge Zelda fan.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Because like I actually teach interactive storytelling as well. So when I'm teaching students, I have to teach them the fundamentals of narrative. But when it's film and TV, you either do linear or non-linear. So like flashback or straightforward. But then you also have with games, you have branching and string of pearls and such. But with the type of story that you're telling, would you see potential then for video game adaptation? Because I know the game presence here is quite substantial. That's something where more of a sci-fi fair we seem to be more supportive or more productive in a video game sense. We even had in the room here outsider games were present. They were promoting their game Tax Force, which was Tax Force. Yeah, it's kind of like a Judge Dredd-esque character who's like a collector for like overdue taxes from evil billionaires. It was such a. I think the logo was up there above us. I think. There he is there. It was actually it was really cool. They had a cardboard cutout and he had the laptop for people to demo onto it, and it was just. But I'm like, this is amazing. This is being produced here and on that. Like that's the only current sci-fi project I can think of in media at the moment that's coming out. They'll appreciate the shout out to it. But like something like that. So would you think Nevermore could be like game? It has games potential.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, not to go into too much detail, but I mean the ships and everything. If there was a game there a while ago, No Man's Sky and stuff like that. Yeah. So where you're traveling around but because the Nevermore story is set only in the solar system, there's no faster than light travel or anything like that. It's all traveling between planets, moons, space stations, all that kind of stuff. And it's like it takes a while to get there. You know, you don't just go and then you're there in 10 seconds or whatever. It takes like 3 weeks to get from Earth to Mars kind of thing.
Okay,
so
great.
A lot of the story happens along the way. So, to have something along the lines of, you build your own ship and you fly around to these other places, I'd play that game.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. Now you say that sounds like almost like Master Commanders in space. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great. And has your experience as, with stunts in particular, has that informed some of the scenes, perhaps your writing approach? Like, have you really put in the scene going, only someone who's done stunts would think, this will look great?
Yeah, so a lot of the fighting stuff, because that's my other thing. This selfless plug here. I run a stage combat school, Victoria Stage Combat, and so a lot.
Where can we find that?
That's out in Inchicore.
And you online as well?
Yes, Instagram, all that jazz. Perfect. Although I don't do it myself, somebody else does. I'm terrible when it comes to that kind of stuff. So where was I going with that?
The stunts is informed.
So a lot of the fighting and all that kind of stuff, I would have. I'd want to put a lot of input into it. You know what I mean? Because as far as fighting on screen goes, when you see like one person taking on like 10 other people, I don't know if you noticed this, but you'll usually have the 10 people waiting to do something in the background. So I don't like that.
Gotcha.
You have to have everybody involved from the start, or what's the point in having them there?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So that would be my input.
It's always great because you could have a room of people write the same, like tell them write this type of a story, but then the approach to it varies based on their experience. Like someone in stunts will look at it differently. Someone who worked in VFX to someone who worked purely as a videographer. It's always interesting. Look for different visions, different elements. I just want to try as well if there's any questions or anything anyone wants to ask.
I wanted to ask a little bit about actually the stunts and such and the kind of things that you've done before.
Oh, sure.
How you got involved in it.
So, so what was the first one I did? The first one I did, I got brought on. See, I had done stage combat courses started off in unarmed and then moved on to doing the weapons and all this kind of stuff. And there was a short was being made out in Ballymun there called 4 horsemen, and they needed swords people who could use weapons and all this kind of stuff. So I ended up getting roped in doing that, and I did, I think I did a good job. So I got offered, can you come in and do this one here? And it all kind of led one thing to another kind of thing. So like, what was the last thing I finished up doing there? I was on Vikings since season 1 and on Valhalla as well. I actually played a character on Valhalla. It was in the first episode there, Becken. He's the guy who fights the Iliad, yeah. And just like one thing just kind of leads to another, you know what I mean? And you end up doing like just working with amazing people,
How are the props as far as like, do they need to be fairly realistic to get a good sense for it?
Look realistic, absolutely, but as far as because a lot of them are made from like bamboo. The swords themselves is pressed bamboo kind of thing. Like they end up breaking an awful lot of times, but like because safety is 100%. You know what I mean? But yeah, the realer they look, the more real the scene looks, I suppose, is probably the best way of putting that. But yeah.
So I suppose kind of imagining them being heavy is maybe some of the acting you have to put in.
Yeah, you have to put that into it, yeah. Because I mean, they really don't weigh anything. If in a real sword fight, you'd want to have weight in the blade so you can, cut through the kind of stuff. But these, they don't. So you have to make it look like it's, doing the damage and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that was one of the things that would pop up regularly as well. But that was fun times.
Do you get to keep any of the props by any chance they do?
Well, no.
All right, say no more. Say no more. Is what's that line in Goodfellas? Can you confirm it? No, that's awesome. No, and has that also informed then, like when you were writing Nevermore, like props? Then you're like, because I know Paul Dini, who worked on the Batman animated series, he actually co-created the character Harley Quinn with Bruce Timm for that show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he created Harley Quinn's, has like an oversized mallet or gun in the hope that they'll make props or ties out of it. Because he's like, I wouldn't mind having something like a confetti gun. But if I write it into the show, the tie company might do it.
Cool.
Has you ever designed anything for Nevermore? Like, have you written something you're like, this is going to look cool, but you were kind of like, I hope if it takes off, this is going to be merchandised.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The ship itself.
Yeah.
Like somebody told me it looks like a crocodile.
Nice.
That wasn't intentional. But it kind of looks like a crocodile. It was only when you pointed it out to me, I was like, oh, it does look like a crocodile. But yeah, stuff like that. The design of the ships and everything. I love doing that, you know what I mean?
Awesome.
Making them look.
And how you design yourself? What are you using? Are you using sketching it out? Are you using software for it?
There was this, it was a really old, I don't know what you would call it. I haven't seen it in years now. It was basically, you could draw very basic polygonal shapes.
Okay.
It was like a Google program kind of thing. So you couldn't put any detail in them or anything like that. So I just kind of drew out the rough shapes of them, and then I gave them to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Oh, well, we're going to put sticks of metal here and windows there and all that kind of stuff."
Awesome.
So yeah. So kind of.
So you've really you have this is fantastic because even when you look at Lucas of Star Wars, he's probably one of the few who's really had an idea and had his fingers in all parts of the development of it, and so you seem to be doing the same. Like you're devising and have an oversight in all of it.
Yeah, because I think. Unless somebody if I'd have to have a very long conversation with somebody about what way things work, I don't want people to fall into the line of thinking, when you say sci-fi, they go, so it's lasers and all this kind of stuff. It's not that, what I mean? It's there's a lot more subtlety to all the.
What would you say is the elevator pitch then to it, or the log line? What would you throw out for Nevermore as it then?
So the one line to sell it all.
Yeah. What's your one line?
They've already lost. They're trying to survive.
Awesome.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's it. I like it. I see that now on the poster, right?
Yeah. Because that is the thing, is they are on the losing. They lost basically, and they're just arsing around through the solar system trying to make a living, kind of thing. So
okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
No, this is great. And so Nevermore, it's not on social media yet.
Not yet, but
not yet.
It's
grand, cool, perfect. Yeah. So as soon as when this drops, then probably another while before this drops online, probably the guts of a month or so. But I suppose once they go on, look up Nevermore. But they can also look up yourself. Do you have personal social media like Instagram?
Oh yeah,
Jay
Cosgrave. Yeah.
Jay Cosgrave is fantastic, and then the Victoria
Stage Combat. Yeah,
Stage Combat as well. Yes, that's perfect. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it. Is this your first Comic-Con?
First Comic-Con, yeah.
Daily fair play then. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.